All right, who is ready for more upsets here today in the Elite Eight? Will we have an upset in the Elite Eight here today? A couple of very intriguing dogs that we're going to look down and break down. In fact, we do have a question out there for you, those joining us live on this Saturday. Now, March 30th, we are that much closer to the Final Four and crowning a champion in college basketball. And that is our question. Which one of these dogs today would you bet to win outright? Is it Illinois? Is it Clemson? Or is it neither? Because the chalk will reign true here today. Get your vote in when you get a chance. We certainly do appreciate it here. And thank you, Brian. We'll get that adjusted here in a second. But we want to welcome in first and foremost our good friend, Tokyo Brandon, who continues to dominate Major League Baseball in a whole lot of different aspects. This is a man that has been crushing spring training. So right into spring training, right into a first couple of days, TB, you have been absolutely on fire. Nobody has got their finger on the pulse like you do of Major League Baseball. We are off and running. Let me ask you this, though, right at the bat. Did you happen to get hurt at all watching any of it? Because if I see one more name of a guy going down because they're out of shape, pull a hamstring, a quad, what the hell is going on to start Major League Baseball?
Baseball players are the most fragile of all athletes, in my opinion. You know, I reminds me of a couple of years ago. You remember Jake Peavy for the Padres? He was out for a week because he cut his hand taking out the garbage. You've got guys who injure themselves playing with their kids. I mean, it's just crazy how these guys get injured and go down and pull hamstrings, and pitchers get blisters and sit out. But, you know, that's part of the game. And it's part of the wild adventure. And the bullpen curses have already begun in day 2 of Major League Baseball. It's a wild ride, and we've got 163 more games to enjoy it.
Yeah, it is actually a wild ride here. I was commenting earlier, we've got 2 best bets we're going to get to Tokyo Brandon here coming up in just a minute on games here today. I was commenting before the show. I'm up last night. I'm watching the Houston Cougars lose to Duke. And then I've got the Yankee game on, and the whole Apple TV thing is interesting. I'm sure there were a lot of fans pretty pissed off they couldn't watch that game last night unless they had a iPhone or iPad or some sort of Apple TV subscription. But this was a 2-1 game heading into the 8th, and I literally watched the Astros just throw the ball into center field, boot it, kick it, throw it again. It was like watching spring training all over. And I guess that's a caveat with betting baseball early, is that if you're expecting what you might, let's say in July, what you might get, a lot of these guys are still trying to figure it out, aren't they?
Yes, they are. And it's a funny thing because there are a lot of cappers that refuse to do full games in Major League Baseball because they don't trust bullpens. But I'm one of those guys who say, hey, you know, you can use that information to your advantage and kind of profit off of it. But I was sweating the Dodgers last night because I had them on the run line, and it seemed very, very comfortable until the 8th inning. And then all of a sudden 3 runs go in, another run goes in, and now all of a sudden a 6-1 is a 6-4. And you're like, oh God. Yep. So here we are. Yep. It's baseball. Hey, you want to see something crazy? Watch the KBO in Korea, because they can't field either. So it's like watching the Bad News Bears bad bullpens. Yep.
Yeah, I love it. Doesn't shock me at all as fundamentals in baseball have disappeared long time ago. Absolutely. Here. But we do have a couple of games over here. And by the way, I do want to remind you, those of you joining us live here today in the chat rooms across all the platforms, whether it be Instagram, big shout out there. Thanks for hanging out with us here on Last Call. Drop any questions you have, a comment, drop them into the chat there. We'll get to as many as we can. Rob Veno coming up in just a few. We're going to break down these Elite Eight games. And also a big shout out to those joining us watching on their mobile on YouTube Shorts. So let's dive in here to a game today. I'm feeling better and better about having Scooble on my fantasy team. I got to tell you, he was lights out for Detroit, 1-0 first game. You've got them circled again here today against the White Sox. Talk to me about what you're looking at in this one.
Yeah, so just to put this out there, I have nothing to do with Shohei's interpreter, and I will refer all of my questions to my attorney. So yeah, Detroit and the White Sox. Let's take a look at the starting pitchers. First of all, we got Kenta Maeda, former Hiroshima Carp pitcher, and he's getting up there a little long in the tooth. And we got Soroka, who was pretty good for the Braves like 3 years ago, and then he took like a 2-year hiatus, and then came back last year to Major League Baseball. So how do we approach this? Well, the Tigers have the much better bullpen, speaking of bullpens. And the White Sox are just an atrocious team. This is basically a single A, double A team. They have no business fielding this roster in Major League Baseball. And we saw the other night, Scooble just dominated them. What was it? 1-0. So the Tigers having some flaccid problems at the plate as well. But I think we're probably looking at another 1-0, 2-0 game here, in my opinion. Soroka hasn't been the same since he came back. As a matter of fact, last year he had a 1.7 plus whip in the season. And Maeda's getting up there in a little old and long in the tooth. But if you notice, he actually has pretty good starts at the beginning of the seasons. And then he gets a little tired as the season goes on. Another nice stat to refer to is Maeda against these White Sox in his career has a 198 batting average against and a 500 OPS against. So he has pretty much dominated these Tigers throughout his career, or these White Sox throughout his career. And I think he's going to hold them down again today. Better starter, better bullpen. Lineups pretty much equally flaccid, but should be able to eke out 1 or 2 runs for the Tigers here. So I like the Tigers on the money line. They're only minus 130. It's good price. Go with the Tigers today. That starts in about 3 hours. So if you're watching the replay, that game might be over already.
Oh, I'll get to it here, guys. Early on, it pays to join us here live each and every Saturday on Last Call, 11 a.m. Eastern time here. Not every day you will hear a Major League Baseball game breakdown and the word flaccid appear, but you just did, and you'll only get that here on WagerTalk TV. So, TB, we got one in the books here, early game that you're leaning on that way. Let's talk about the second game you're going to be looking at, and of course, it's going to involve the LA Dodgers, the UConn of baseball, so to speak. So what do you got today here for us?
This is the best lineup I've seen since 1927 Bronx Bombers. These guys are just amazing. And they scored 6 runs yesterday, and Ohtani and Freeman were both offers at the plate. So that tells you what they can do with this lineup. But you're not going to make a lot of money betting minus 200 money lines throughout the season. They would have to win 75% of their games, which is highly unlikely. It's possible, though, with this lineup. So you got to look for other ways to bet this team. I like to look at the starting pitchers because the starting pitchers are a one-on-one matchup, and Yamamoto had a horrible start versus the Padres in Korea, his first start. So because of that, we're actually getting good value on him to record a win in this game. So with the best lineup since 1927 behind him, not a good bullpen, but the Cardinals are looking awful this year. I love Goldschmidt. I love some of their batters, but they're just looking horrible this year. I think at plus 210, plus 220 on some books, putting a small flyer on Yamamoto to record a win would be a decent bet in this game. The Dodgers are going against Lance Lynn, former Dodger, and Lynn hasn't looked very good. I mean, a couple of years ago, he was good. I think last year he had a 1-2-3 whip or something like that, which is not bad. But going against this lineup, I think he's going to get shelled. At least they should be able to score 3-4 runs in this game, and then Katie bar the door when the bullpen comes in. So I like Yamamoto to record a win for this price. Yesterday, the Dodgers pitcher to record a win was plus 140. So there's ways to find value, even though you're never going to find value on a minus 210 money line, but on a plus 210 prop, you can find some value here. And with that lineup backing him up, I think Yamamoto to get the win. Look, he's a natural talent. In Japan, in 6 years, I think he had a 1.98 ERA in 6 years. So, I mean, he's a natural born talent. That first start was just... It was an aberration. He's going to right the ship eventually, and I think it's going to be today. So Yamamoto to record a win plus 210 is another bet. Don't go all in on it, but a 1 or 2% play would be nice.
Yamamoto going up against has Lance Lynn lost any weight? Do we know? Because the man looked like he ate Lance Lynn last year. And he was, wow, the dude looked like he had a gluten allergy. And it affected the way it affected the way he pitched too. It wasn't great there. We do have some questions coming in, but it's kind of hard not to look. And I think there are some questions coming in on the chat around his Dodgers team, and what is the best way to approach him this year? Because you just laid out a pretty good way to incorporate a prop at a much better price that correlates to the Dodgers winning anyway, right? So what is the advice here? Because it used to be a couple of years ago, we just lay the 1.5, forget about it. It was automatic every day, and we'd cash the ticket. Are we in that area now, or are the books already pricing that out of the question as well?
They are pricing that out of the question. If you look, the run lines are minus 170, minus 180 now. So it's getting kind of ridiculous. I think DraftKings has really good options. So a -2 is actually not a bad option because it's very similar to a run line. If they win by 2, it's a push. So they have to win by more than 2. It's a pretty safe way to bet. And if you do a -2, you get really good prices for that. Another way to approach it would be first to 3 runs, first to score 3. Especially when the Dodgers bat at home. You can get a really good price on race to 3 runs with the Dodgers if they have a decent starter on the hill. Those are a couple ways that I'm approaching the Dodgers this year. Also -1s, but usually -1s are going to be -180 and -170 as well. But the starting pitcher to record a win is a good way to approach it, and also a -2 alt, which is readily available on DraftKings.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how far they'll take it to books here with the Dodgers this season. So stay tuned here. But there are so many different alternate markets in that you can absolutely still have the Dodgers win, but get a much better price here in some of these other alternate markets. Shout out to Julian22 hanging out with us here. PPC Miller also joining us in Instagram. And, of course, the crew in the house on YouTube here dropping some questions in. SoCal Warrior in the house. Doug Reed, Ray, Brian, thank you guys so much for swinging by here. Drop those baseball questions here. You've got the man to answer them. And don't forget, if you'd hit that thumbs up as well as the subscribe button if you're new to us here on WagerTalk TV, we'd certainly appreciate it. All you got to do is hit that little bell and you are good to go. So let's get some of these questions lined up here. Interesting stuff here about, well, we'll stick with the Dodgers because Ray has got a question here about any opinion on the Dodgers team total over 4.5 here going up against Mr. Buffet there, Lance Lynn.
Mr. Buffet. He looks like Sidney Ponson, my favorite pitcher in Major League Baseball history. Do you remember Sidney Ponson for the Orioles? That kid was huge. He was from Aruba, by the way. But anyways, his waistline was about as big as his ERA was. He lasted about 2 years in the MLB. But 4.5. 4.5 is pretty high. But I think the Dodgers can get 4.5 any day. They're at home, so betting a team total can always be risky because they're only going to bat 8 times because 80% of the time they're going to be winning. I would look at a race to 3 runs instead. Or even player props, hits, RBIs. What was it? Hits, runs, RBIs over 1.5. If you find any for any Dodger players, especially Mookie Betts. But the books have already caught on to this. They're making Mookie Betts hits, runs, RBIs prop at 2.5 now for plus 105. So that there's no value there. But Ohtani, you can get 1.5, and Freeman, you can get 1.5. So I think those are better than 4.5.
All right, there you go here, guys. Good stuff there. Questions rolling in. Let's get them down here. I believe SoCal Warriors got a question for us here, and he's talking about the first day for Cease on the mound with the Padres. This has been a fun game to watch. How do I approach good old Dylan Cease now in the National League? What do you look at for this game here today against the old Giants who are throwing Hicks on the mound?
Yeah, they burned me last night. I had the Padres last night, but Musgrove got tagged pretty good. I didn't think the Giants lineup had it in them, but they did. Dylan Cease. I think Dylan Cease, frankly, is kind of tailing off. I didn't really like what I saw from him last year, but he's better than Hicks. The Padres have a better lineup than the Giants, despite what you saw last night, and despite losing Juan Soto. I still think the Padres have a decent lineup. I might look at it under in this one rather than a side, because I think both of these starting pitchers are pretty much going to hold it down today. But if I had to go with the side, I would go with the Padres. But I think Dylan Cease, I'm not a huge fan of his, to be honest. I think I'm having a brain freeze right now. Who's the pitcher they lost that signed with? Who's the pitcher they lost? I think Cease is a downgrade from the pitcher they lost. So I don't know why.
Snell? Or you're talking about Snell? You're talking about Snell? Yeah. Yes. Gotcha. Yes.
I think Cease is a downgrade from Snell, actually. And they lost Juan Soto, and they lost Snell, and then they added Cease. So overall, and then they added a KBO hitter. So overall, I think the Padres are going to be a little weaker than they were last season. If I had to take a side, I would take the Padres today, but I like the under in this one, actually.
Oh, all right. Leaning towards the under here. I'm seeing a bunch of Braves questions coming in as well. There, Braves taking on the Phillies. Max Fried finally healthy. Aaron Nola, Rich is a SOB. Is he not here? Thanks to his agent who managed somehow to get him a contract, but not anybody else on his roster there. So shout out to Scott Boras there, playing favorites there. So Phillies, Braves, Acuna, I believe. Isaac is in the chat room here. Shout out Eisen joining us via YouTube Shorts here today, watching the live feed on his mobile. Over 1.5, bases cashed yesterday. What are you thinking about it today here with him going up against Aaron Nola?
Yeah, so I've done some research on this game, and actually, despite both pitchers being really good, there are a lot of players that have a long and good history against these starting pitchers, and I picked some out for the Phillies. Real Muto has a really good history against the Atlanta pitcher, and Harper also does. But the one I liked the best was Turner. Turner has a great history against Fried. So those three players betting an over. And here's some advice: take runs, hits, RBIs rather than total bases, because total bases, if your batter walks, he loses an at-bat because when he walks, it doesn't count for total bases. But runs, hits, RBIs, if he walks, he can still score a run and count for the prop. So runs, hits, RBIs, much better than total bases. So Bryce Harper, Real Muto, and Turner are really good against Fried in their history. So those three guys should be able to do some damage. And on the Braves side, Acuna, of course. But there were, put me on the spot here, but I did put out a client play on Riley. Riley has a great history against Nola. Yeah, Riley has a great history against Nola. I think he's batting third in that lineup. So he went 0 for yesterday, but he walked and he still scored a run and an RBI because he walked with the bases loaded. So I like Riley to go over runs, hits, RBIs over 1.5 here too. So actually, these are great pitchers, but they do have baggage against these batters that they're facing today. So an over might also be a look if it's 7 or 7.5. Over might also be a good look.
Not a bad look at all there. Atlanta well on their way. Should be a good test here, but it's so damn early here as the first weekend in Major League Baseball is upon us. Don't go crazy here, guys, what we're saying, because teams on what they look now, come June, end of May, they're not going to be the same. So just ask the Tampa Bay Rays last year how well that worked for them. But they did win enough games early to carry them, so that's also something to keep an eye on, TB.
Yep. They lost all 4 of their rotation starters. So I think I'm kind of going against the grain. Everyone else thinks it's such a great organization. I know Brian Leonard and I disagree on this, but I think it's a rebuilding year for the Rays this year. They lost all 4 of their rotation starters, and they plugged them in. They patched it up nicely, but patches are patches, and they have 4 guys who have never started more than 90 games. So I think it's going to be troublesome for the Rays after the All-Star break. I don't think they're going to get to their win total this year.
All right, so we've got let's see, Air Duck 23 in the house popping in. I think we had a few people asking about everyone's favorite, which worries me a little bit here about Baltimore Orioles, that everybody and their mother seems to be all over this team early and often. But Rodriguez against Canning. And there's some questions regarding whether or not we like Baltimore at this price. I'm seeing 165 somewhere in that ballpark there. Let me just make sure. Yeah, 165, 8.5 as a total there. It is at Camden here. Are you impressed with the Orioles here? Should we keep riding this train against an Angels team that is clearly rebuilding at this point?
I'm very high on the Angels. As a matter of fact, they have the 7th best lineup. They didn't lose any pieces. They have the number 1 farm system. They have a great bullpen, lots of depth, and they added Corbin Burns, who was just Superman on the mound the other day. As a matter of fact, Corbin Burns has a sub-1 whip in 4 years straight. He also has an average 150 innings pitched, so he's an absolute stud. So let's talk about today. I like the Orioles today, but yeah, anytime the price gets to about 160, 170, it gets a little pricey. So here's a little trick you can do. I use DraftKings to get my lines. So if you use a different book, I apologize, but DraftKings offers game lines, alt lines, -1, -1.5, -2, -2.5. So when the line gets to 160, 170, you can do a -1 and bring it down to about 135. And what a -1 is if your team wins by 1, it's a push. So it's actually kind of insurance against a run line. So it's a little more pricey than a run line because it's safer. But a -1 is always a good option, which I like to use whenever the line is 160 or higher. If it's 155, I'll just bet the money line, but 160 or higher, do a -1. It's safe, and it's like Pai Gow poker. Nothing's wrong with the push. You just go on to the next day.
All right, we got more questions coming in. We'll send it back out. By the way, shout out once again to those there in Perry T. Dog joining us, actually following us now on Instagram as we are live there today as well. We appreciate you guys. Those questions you got, Major League Baseball, we're going to cover with Rob Veno everything you need to know about the upcoming Elite Eight games here today. We'll take more questions, break those games down, give you some best bets, and of course, we always want to know from you, what is your favorite bet of the day, whether it be the MLB or whether it be the Elite Eight? Make sure you drop that in the comments below. We certainly appreciate it. And of course, we keep an eye on those comments all day long here. So let us know who it is, your favorite best bet here today, as I'm getting a strikeout prop, I believe, right now. And it has to do with Joe, is it Ryan? I believe it is. It's Joe Ryan here taking on the Kansas City Royals. Seth Lugo, former Padre, him and Michael Wacha now part of the Kansas City Royals organization. It's kind of a pick'em price. What do you think here with Joe Ryan? Over 5 Ks is what we're seeing.
Let's take a look. Kansas City. So when I look at K props, I always like to see how often does the team strike out, and how does the pitcher strike? What's his K per 9 rate? The Royals are actually fairly disciplined at the plate. So this early in the season, I think a lot of pitchers have short leashes because they have to go all season. I would shy away from a strikeout prop over. Simply because I think the Royals have pretty decent plate discipline. And even though Joe Ryan does have a decent strikeout rate, I would stay away from it this early in the season. What's actually a better bet in most cases is outs recorded. Because there's more variation in outs recorded, because the average pitcher will pitch 15 to 17 to 18 outs, where strikeouts is usually between 5 and 9. So there's more variance in outs recorded, so you have a better shot of picking an over-under with more variance. But I wouldn't do it this early in the season. I would save your strikeout props until we have a little more data about how people are performing this year. So I'm shying away from strikeout prop. Actually, I'll give one out today though. This is a client play that I put out earlier. But canning under 5.5 strikeouts is, I think, a decent play for today. But don't bet the farm. Just bet 1 or 2%, like a small play on it. But I actually put this out to my clients, canning under 5.5. The Orioles have excellent plate discipline. They always do. And Canning faced the Orioles once last year. He only got 4 strikeouts on him in 5+ innings work. He's not much of a strikeout guy, and the Orioles just have great plate discipline. So that's a strikeout prop I would play. I did play.
I like that. No, that's awesome stuff here, guys. And of course, you can head over to wt.buzz/TB. That is where you can get Tokyo Brandon's best bets. You can also partner up with him. Now would be a good time to start off the year with Major League Baseball, as he certainly puts the work in, guys, which is what it is all about, as you can tell. And the questions also, we'll take a couple of more here, and then we'll get Rob Veno in, and we'll talk some college basketball and Elite Eight coming up here, guys. Don't forget to hit that like button as well as the subscribe button. We certainly appreciate you stopping by on this edition of Last Call here on WagerTalk TV. It's all about you guys, so any questions you got, that's what these guys are here for, to help point you in the right direction. We do have another question coming in. Anthony Marquez hanging out with us in the YouTube chat. Wants to know about Ellie De La Cruz. 1.5 plus RBIs, runs, hits for the Reds here tonight. So what do we think we're going to get from good old Ellie today as we take a look at that matchup? And I believe the Reds are playing. I believe they're playing late, right? Yeah. They're playing. They're Nats. Yeah, well, I mean, hell, I'm pretty sure you and I could probably get more than 1.5 off of Patrick Corbin. So what do you think? Hunter Green taking on Patrick Corbin, minus 180 for the Reds here. Where 10 is the total. What do you think about Ellie in this one?
It's a small sample size. He's only faced him 6 times, but he has 4 hits, 1 home run, 1 RBI, and a strikeout. His OPS is 1.833. So if you have the 1.5 hits, runs, RBIs for De La Cruz, I think it would be a good bet depending on the price. What books are doing now when a player has such a good history against the pitchers, they're jacking it up to 2.5. Which is what they've done with Mookie Betts today. But if you can get Ellie De La Cruz on a 1.5, sure, I would take that. As you know, and as we've talked about even last year, Joe, Corbin is how does this guy must have photos of someone's wife? How does he keep a major league job?
He's ass, dude. The dude is just total. He's throwing batting practice. I don't get it. Why do we keep employing him? Is beyond me.
No, he's worse than Jose Lima. I can't believe this guy's still employed. He's worse than Sidney Ponson.
Unreal. Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I would definitely take it if your book has a 1.5.
Go with the 1.5. All right, good. We got a couple more here. We'll go to the Cubs taking on the Rangers. Hendricks taking on Bradford. And I believe the question was, and it's a legit question, is whether or not we think that the Cubs will actually score runs for Hendricks here on the road. Do we trust that the Cubs can get it done for him? Can they score enough here? How would you approach this game against the Rangers? I'm seeing Rangers minus 125 total, 9.5 in this one. What do you think we're going to get here?
So as cappers, our job is to predict the future. And the easiest way to predict the future is by known commodities. Today, the Cubs have never faced this pitcher, so it's kind of an unknown commodity. The Cubs are not performing so far this season. There's too many unknowns for me to play this game. So it's, this is what's nice about sports betting as opposed to blackjack. In blackjack, you have to play the hand that's dealt to you, but in sports betting, we can pick which hands we're going to play. So if this hand was dealt to me, I would give it back to the dealer and say, I'm not playing this hand. So I'm staying away from this game today, guys. Sorry to be boring, but I'll save you some money and say don't bet this game. Yeah,
I want to see a little more from Hendricks here myself here. All right, we'll go to one more question, and William Bennett. We're going to get to UConn and Illinois coming up here with Rob Veno in just a minute here. We got you covered there, but Mr. Tokyo Brandon here, ready to roll. One more time for just one more question or two. Jabaka42 wants to know if we can get some weekly KBO content from you. And I promise you, Jabaka, I'll be working with TB to get those shorts and those types of videos out to you guys about the KBO, the Japanese league. Nobody covers it like he does, and you guys already know that, and I know that's why you're asking. So we've got you covered. Stay tuned for that here. While we want to know from Mike Scott in the house, joining us in the YouTube chat. Shout out, Mike. Thanks for stopping by. What are we doing with the Red Sox? Do we keep riding the Red Sox plus 1.5 here today? And if I'm not mistaken, that game is early. Is it not here? Or is that one of the late? No, that's the late game. I'm sorry. Red Sox Mariners. Yes. Minus 155 for the Mariners. 7.5. Yeah, it's the late game there. Gilbert taking on Crawford here in this one at T-Mobile Park in Seattle. What do you think? Grab the 1.5?
Well, these are two good pitchers, and they have pretty decent history against the other teams. So the only time I would take a 1.5 would be in a game that I think is going to be under 7.5 runs. So if I generally don't like to play 1.5s, plus 1.5s. I don't like to play them because, the percentage of games that end in 1 run is something like 5 or 6%. So, why take a 1/20th shot on this particular game when you can, take them on the money line and get some, if you like them to keep it close, either add 2.5 runs on an alt line or take them on the money line. I don't like plus 1.5s. So I'll tell you, I do think Cutter Crawford is a really good pitcher. But the problem is these Red Sox are just not good. But the Mariners are playing like ass as well. They have been since spring. I have the Mariners team total or the win total over on the season, and I'm not really inspired by how they're playing so far. But 2 games out of 160, they'll come around. I mean, they have such good stars on their team, but they're playing like crap. Really, they really are. And the Red Sox are playing better than they should be. I expect the Red Sox to go down, and I expect the Mariners to go up. But for the time being, I wouldn't play a 1.5 on this. I would take the Red Sox on the money line if I were you, but very small.
Ooh, all right, there we go. Listen, go big or go home. And let me just tell you something. When the ass man calls you ass, man, take it. There's a reason for it, because if you guys haven't checked it out, maybe one of the greatest backdrops we have seen here. Throw it up there. There it is. Ass man, there he is. So when he calls you ass, then you know exactly what you're dealing with here, and it's not great. TB, remind the folks here what you got up at your page at WagerTalk.com here today for them to partner up with you.
Yes, I'm a little disappointed my Arizona Wildcats are not in the basketball tournament, so save your basketball questions for Rob.
Yes.
Yes. To the state of New York, you are the ass man. So, so go to my. It's right there, Buzz/TB. I have 2 Major League Baseball plays out for today. I will be putting KBO out later. I saw the early lines coming out, and I think I'm going to have a 5% play in the KBO today, but the lines are not up on DraftKings yet. As soon as they are, I think I'm going to throw a max play up on KBO, because there's one matchup that I really like. And regarding the earlier question about KBO content, like Joe said, I'm going to start doing some free plays, and some of them are going to be KBO. So pay attention to WagerTalk's YouTube channel, because they put up free play videos daily. Joe is working hard to get you that content, and I will be sending those in. But for today, 2 Major League plays, and I will have a 5% KBO later tonight.
All right, so 2 quick ones here before we get you out of here. Number 1, real quick here, TB. What in the hell does the J stand for on your hat? And also I'm being asked on whether I believe SGD, is that what it was there with the KBO there? Your favorite team in the world there, SSG, that's right. Are they a good team that you're excited about on the way this year in the KBO?
Second question first. SSG is playing like ass so far this season.
Yes!
We
got to get an ass button here. We do. We need an ass button for TB.
You started it, Joe. You said something about ass earlier. In my head. SSG was the champion 2 years ago in 2022, but they've kind of fallen off a cliff. They look bad this year. So no, actually the team I like in the KBO is Hama, because I like orange teams generally. I like the Hurricanes. I like Hama, and I like the Buccaneers when they were orange. So I like orange teams generally speaking. But the J on my hat, this is the Japanese World Baseball Classic hat. It's actually the Pro Fit model. So this is the actual hat that they wore in the World Baseball Classic. So
see, all you got to do is ask, guys, and we will get these questions for you. But the bottom line is one final one here for Rick Parka, who is joining us on YouTube Shorts. Real Rick, yes or no? Guardians, are they a team you are looking to back early on in the season? And when I say early on, I mean like today. Are you looking to back them today against the Athletics?
Absolutely. And when Sears starts for the A's, this is the only time you can get pretty decent value betting against them because he's the only good pitcher they have. He's the only pitcher who has a whip that's under 1.7. So he's actually a decent pitcher, but I like BB better. And I do like the Guardians today, but I do not like the Guardians for full season. As a matter of fact, I hate that whole division, that AL Central. I can't stand those teams in that. Not because I don't like them, but they're so hard to gauge, and they're so hard to. It's like just so mediocre. And when you have a bunch of mediocrity together, it never goes up or down. When we're betting as cappers, we want variance. We want to pinpoint some variance and find some spots. But when there's a big blob of mediocrity, it's really hard to pinpoint those variants. So I hate this division. I really hate this division. But yes, I do like the Guardians today. Like I said earlier, though, this is day 2, day 3 of the season. So, don't put your mortgage on it. You should only be betting 1%, 2% plays at this time, unless there's something you really like. Which I do really like in the KBO today. So, but Major League Baseball, I would play it safe. But yes, I do. This is one play that I was going to put out. I do like BB, and when Sears is on the mound, you always get good value betting against a single A team.
So if you could, on your way out, just if you could put the American League Central into one word, what word would that be, TB?
Mediocre.
Ass. That's the word. It's ass. That's exactly it. Get out of here, TB. Good luck with your plays, brother. We appreciate it. Yep. Go visit them over at WagerTalk.com. As you can tell, whether it be KBO, the Japanese League, or Major League Baseball, the man has got his finger on the pulse of what is happening. So we want to once again shout out to Salty Bacon in the house, Isaac, Rich Parker, Michael, those of you joining us on your mobile phone on our new live YouTube short stream. We appreciate that. Obviously, it looks great on a mobile phone, and those sitting behind the desktop or watching on the TV, we certainly appreciate you guys as well. Shout out to Kitty Cat, Peter Patel, Christian Hoven, Elgato 52. We appreciate you guys hanging out on Instagram. Don't forget, drop a comment below. We want to know. We got Major League Baseball here. We've got, of course, Elite 8, which we're about to dive into. We want to know what your favorite play is of the day. Go ahead and drop it in there in the comments below. And, of course, we read the comments. We reply to the comments. We appreciate you guys taking the time to hang with us. And now we move on to college hoops, the Elite 8, with none better than Mr. Rob Veno, crushing the March Madness tournament to this part. Rob, how are you, my man? I mean, we have a poll question up right now for those that participated here in the chat rooms. And the question is, which underdog in the Elite 8 today wins outright? Clemson getting 3.5, Illinois plus 8.5, or neither, because both favorites are going to win. But a lot of people think Clemson, 48% of those voting, think Clemson has got the best shot of barking here, being the barking dog of the day here, Veno. Were you shocked out? I mean, we got one favorite last night, ended up taking it down with Purdue. I think everything else was kind of, and Tennessee maybe. But, boy, the dogs have been barking here over the last couple of weeks, haven't they?
Well, and the ACC dogs especially, right, Joe?
Yeah.
NC State, Clemson, Duke last night, injury to Jamal Shed really altered the outcome of that game, I would think. But still 3 ACC teams in the Elite 8, and a lot of that has been done as underdog work. I would agree with the chat. If we're just asking the question, which team, which underdog has the best opportunity today to advance, I would think it would be Clemson. I don't know that Illinois has enough to get past UConn. So what we've seen out of Clemson, I'll dive into it real quick here, Joe. To me, when I look at this game, I kind of feel like Clemson is a better version of Grand Canyon. Grand Canyon head coach Bryce Drew decided in that ball game that he wasn't going to go up and down, high octane, 94 feet of basketball with Alabama. Even if Alabama made a shot, he was going to inbounds the ball, take his time, get it up the floor. But what happened to them in that game was they shot from 3-point range absolutely miserably. And Clemson has been shooting fairly decent from 3-point range at this point in time. You know, you and I discussed on WagerTalk's college basketball happy hour show a couple of times this week about the change in venues, right? And it's hard to project which of the Sweet 16 teams are going to come into the brand new venues and shoot it well right out of the gate. And I think we saw last night, right? Marquette couldn't hit the broadside of a barn from 3 in the new venue. And it happens to a lot of teams. These two teams, it didn't really happen to. Alabama shot it well. Clemson shot it well. I think defensively, you know, I'll show you a sheet here real quick, Joe. You're not going to be able to read it, but this is me trying to find out who the referee crew is today for the Clemson-Alabama game.
Yes.
The NCAA, they did post the 40 referees that are, you know, responsible for Sweet 16 and Elite 8 action. And I crossed off all of the ones who have already gone. So I've got it narrowed down to a potential of 16 guys. But the only reason I did it, and I was trying to seek it out, was Clemson has been really physical with their teams, with teams that they played against so far. And Arizona was uncomfortable, right? Caleb Love was terrible from 3-point range because Chase Hunter and company out on the perimeter got into him a little bit. And if the referee crew is going to let you be physical down low, where remember PJ Hall had all that foul trouble for Clemson first 2 games, but no foul trouble last game. If they get a crew that's going to allow them to be somewhat physical with Alabama, then you'd like Clemson's chances even better. If they're going to get a whistleless crew, so to speak, then you might like Alabama. But, you know, it's a long story or a long-winded way to say that I think Clemson has the better opportunity. I don't know that they can get there. And certainly money has come in on Alabama early here today. They've been pushed from 2.5 to 3.5. So money likes Alabama. But Clemson's body of work, Joe, it's got to be the best of any team in the tournament so far. Crush New Mexico, crush Baylor, pretty much wire-to-wire Arizona. That's 3 really good teams, and 2 of which play really fast tempo, not quite as fast as Alabama, but fast. And Baylor was like the number 5 3-point shooting team in the country. Alabama thrives on threes. The 3 teams Clemson's played in this tournament so far have shot 13%, 17.9%, and 25% from 3. If they can limit some of those threes from Griffin and Sears and company, I would think Clemson has the best shot of being an underdog that wins today.
Yeah, and let me just add to this here, Robin. Is I don't know how. I mean, somehow Alabama managed to beat North Carolina, but I think a lot of that had to do with North Carolina beating itself when push came to shove there. But this is now not this should not be a shock that Clemson is where they are at, given the fact that all year long they have been absolute money, guys, as a dog. I mean, they are 9-1 against the number, 7-3 straight up as an underdog this season. They have always leveled up against better competition. And we somehow dismiss that because, you know, they didn't have the kind of great ACC season or the notoriety that a Duke or a North Carolina did. But the reality is they're 9-1 against the number as a dog. They're 7-3. They're winning, not only covering those games, Rob, they're winning them outright. And they're doing it on the road. Why? Because I think, as it was mentioned in the chat room, that we're talking about, what, 3 or 4 upperclassmen, right? Seniors that are on this team. We've got experienced guard play. And they have shown this all year. For some reason, the market continues, I think, to disrespect them. This is exactly the kind of team. And Alabama, by the way, Veno, is completely the opposite, because the better competition they played, their entire record and numbers are pretty padded by playing teams that can't score. Clemson can score and has been scoring. I don't understand the fading of Clemson the entire way through here, Veno.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you said that, Joe, because I'm going to give credit to my youngest son who actually works for the ACC network. And before the tournament, he told me, he said, if I had to pick one of these teams, I would pick Clemson simply because every time they played a good team in the ACC, they played really well. He said they dogged it against the mediocre to bottom half, which we discussed. The ATS record the other day was 8-1. You just reiterated. Now it's up to 9-1 as an underdog. And it so matches up with what he was telling me and with what you just said. They seem to have a different focus level when they're playing better teams. Don't ask us why, but we see it all the time in college sports and even in pro sports where there is somewhat of a, disrespect somewhat when you think you're stepping down in class, right? And you don't play as hard. But Clemson, so far this tournament, anybody that they've been underdog to, they have come through and defeated. And New Mexico was a popular round one pick. Lots thought Baylor would get past Clemson because Clemson's first round win was a fluke. And then, of course, Arizona was 7-point chalk against them in round 3, and they won that too. And let's credit real quick here, Joe, because you and I, we have a lot of fun at the expense of college basketball head coaches. But Brad Brownell, for what it's worth, that last game against Arizona, and I don't know if it's just strictly out coaching Tommy Lloyd or if it's him being really good on the sidelines. I'm going to, tailor this to him being really good on the sidelines. The 3 backdoor plays he ran and one off an inbounds where the cutter is just all alone with nobody within 40 feet of him for a dunk. It looked like the way Pete Carrill in Princeton used to execute backdoor cuts and just take people off guard. So credit to Brad Brownell. Credit to the guys you mentioned on the perimeter, Chase Hunter, Joe Girard played for Syracuse, a lot of experience there. And, of course, Hall and the chef hats, right? Shefflin down low as well, who can stretch. I would think Clemson's got an opportunity here.
I'm totally aboard with you there, Veno, on that. But, of course, we want to know from you guys, which underdog do you think in the Elite Eight is going to win outright here? Drop it in the comments below here. We certainly appreciate hearing from you guys, hearing what you think. Right now, Clemson, 47% in the poll right now as the best choice to go ahead and win outright, which leaves us, of course, Illinois getting 8.5 here, and maybe we're doing exactly to Illinois what the market has done to Clemson the entire time. And by the way, I know we're being asked in the chat room, is Clemson the way to look? Does Clemson also correlate to an over in this game here? Veno, you mentioned the love and the money coming in on Alabama here. There was some question about whether or not, if you're not completely sold on Clemson maybe winning this thing outright, maybe a team total, Veno, which I think is hovering around 80 and a half. I don't think Clemson cares whether or not they go into a track meet. I really don't think at this point they're not going to try and slow Alabama down. I think they're going to try to make Alabama's life as miserable as possible and take advantage of the mistakes that will inevitably happen here. But what do we got for an in-game total here right now, Veno? Is this number moving up?
Well, actually, the money's kind of dragged it down a little bit, half a point,
down.
1 point. It gets difficult for bettors at this point in time. I think it's really difficult to play Alabama unders. But I'm going to refer back one more time to the Grand Canyon game, right? That game goes 72-61. Grand Canyon frustrated them. Grand Canyon just could not shoot to save their lives in that game from distance. So a couple of ways to look at it, Joe, and I don't know which side of the fence, people in the chat room stand. But if you're looking at Alabama's defense, this question right here, Rob, can Clemson get over their 80.5 team total against Alabama's defense? If you want to, you can do it. How many teams got over 80.5 points this year in the SEC against Alabama? Quite a few. And Clemson, to your point, Joe, their tempo numbers might not look like they're a fast team, but they have no problem getting to 74 or better. So can they do it? Absolutely they can. Do they want to play a different style and maybe win the game, 78-72, somewhere in that vicinity? I could see that as well. So it's a difficult question. And you know me, I don't tend to shy away from overs, but I think this is a completely different game than the strong feeling I had that Alabama and UNC would get up at over 173 points. You just knew that was going to be racehorse back and forth, plenty of opportunity, even included, as you mentioned, a 6-minute stretch to start the second half where North Carolina scored 1 point and they still got over 173. Just a different game in that one. This is a more difficult handicap on the total.
Yeah, Ray's in agreement there in the chat room. And a big shout out to those of you joining us here on this Saturday edition of Last Call. Each and every Saturday, guys, 11 a.m. Eastern time. We go for about an hour or so and get any last-minute questions you guys may have and review, give you some best bets on the games and what we have seen, what we have heard, and what we know here. And hopefully you guys will hit that subscribe button, become part of the WagerTalk TV family. Give us a thumbs up. We certainly appreciate it here as we talk Illinois getting ready to go up as an 8.5-point dog against UConn here. 155 is a total, and I haven't seen any movement in the total whatsoever here, Veno. But Illinois is another one of these teams that, and we've mentioned it now for the last 2 weeks on every show that we have done. We went through every other team on the list when we talked about futures and the ability to win, and nobody ever brought up Illinois, and yet they went against the toughest defense. And Illinois and Iowa State, by the way, their defense is much tougher than what they're going to face here in UConn. And they still managed to get it done and win that game. So I don't think they're going to win. But, man, it feels like if any team can score enough to sneak in under this 8.5, it's Illinois, Veno.
Yeah, and now I think I saw where UConn is tied for number 1 in the nation in offensive efficiency. So that's something Illinois didn't have to face when they faced Iowa State. Iowa State, of course, an excellent defensive team that wants to slow down tempo, which they did in that game and drag the score down. I think Connecticut's not adverse to any style of play, Joe. Remember a couple of weeks back, I was so happy when I heard Rick Pitino in the Colonel Sanders suit tell us in the Big East tournament, I told my guys, just go out and score 100. And they were about to play UConn. And I thought to myself, well, if you're going to try and score 100, you're probably going to get outscored anyway, because despite the tempo rating that's listed in the popular metrics websites, Ken Palm included, UConn will run with anybody. They don't fear that. So listen, Illinois, and again, you know me, Joe, I like to play head coach. I like to see if I could design game plans. It's kind of how I handicap. Illinois doesn't want to come down and face a set UConn defense with Donovan Clingan standing at the rim and try and score off of that. They want to push pace. It's not exactly what Brad Underwood has done his entire career, but it's what he's chosen to do with this team, and they've taken off ever since. Inside the Big Ten, they faced some methodical teams, and they scored on just about every one of them. They didn't shoot the ball well against Iowa State. Illinois numbers for that game, for those who don't know, 42.1 from the field, 31% from three. How about 51.7 from the free throw line? Could come into play here if they can't make free throws. They did get past Iowa State, and they survived. I'll add this to Illinois' credit. They survived a stint with Terrence Shannon on the bench with 4 fouls. And then he came back in the game. But do they have enough, Joe? I mean, is Dane Danger and Coleman Hawkins and these guys down low good enough against Clingan and company? Do they have enough height and length against what UConn brings in the form of Newton and Castle and, of course, Alex Caravan? I mean, the list goes on and on with UConn, right? So I don't know. It's hard to bet into that freight train because we've seen the graphic multiple times over the last couple of days, how much UConn has defeated their opponents by the winning margin in this tournament. Danny Hurley, 9-0 against the spread since he's got this team into the tournament. I would tend to take UConn here. I think, Joe, let me just say this too real quick, that we talked about the total in the other game. I'd be more inclined to think that this game is going over than the other game going over. This number is 10 points lower. And you have an Illinois team that loves to run, and I think a favorite that doesn't mind running with them. And we see in all these Connecticut games the last couple of years in the tournament, and it happened again to San Diego State the other night. Close. Boom, 15-2 run in like 90 seconds, and margin created, game over. And the total didn't get over the other night. Probably should have, but Danny Hurley called off the dogs. I don't know if he'll have to call off the Dogs with a 20-plus lead here tonight, but I'd be more inclined to take over in this game than I would the other game.
155 is what we're looking at there. We are getting some questions in the chat regarding Terrence Shannon and I believe his point prop here. Veno, where I believe it's 25, maybe 24 and a half, somewhere along those lines. There are some people in the chat rooms here that are utilizing him because, listen, if you think it's absolutely correlated to you thinking Illinois keeps this game within the number, right? I mean, he's always the guy. You know what I mean? So he's got to be that guy. If he doesn't hit at least 25 points or more, boy, oh boy, it's going to be a monster effort from Domask or one of the other guys that's going to have to pick up that slack. This isn't Caleb Love. He has been way more consistent. He has been a guy that we can count on that's going to get his points no matter what here, Veno. If you like Illinois, there's no way you don't like his over in points.
Yeah, it's a good question, Joe, because I actually put some thought into this. And the person that came to mind for me and at this point in the tourney as a one-man band was way back to either 03 or 04 when Dwayne Wade was on Marquette. And you just knew, and Dwayne Wade carried that team. No matter what the defense was against him, no matter how much coaches prepared for him, Dwayne Wade still got his. And that's kind of the way I feel about Terrence Shannon here. He could get that in a losing effort. There's no problem getting that in a losing effort. If this game ends up, 85, 75, out of those 75, Terrence Shannon's going to get over 25. I think maybe last game was the game he got out of the way with the foul trouble, right? Brush that one away. Now we're not going to get into foul trouble anymore. And don't get me wrong, Danny Hurley and UConn is going to come with some form of defensive game plan to try and at least contain him. But contain him still means 26 probably. And last thing that makes that a good bet in my mind is that I truly believe a lot of this game is going to be played in the open floor. And when games get quick and open floor like that, you're just scrambling to defend a guy, right? It's not like your game plan to defend in the half court goes right out the window against Terrence Shannon. He's great at getting to the free throw line. You could get 7-8 free throw points out of him. So I'd agree with that that viewer in the chat room that Terrence Shannon is worth a play on over 25 points.
Yeah, I agree there. And Scott's in there asking about Illinois not having a true point guard, and will that be a detriment versus UConn or inconsequential? The question to me with Illinois is not if they can score against UConn. They can score against UConn. They can score against anybody. They just scored against the best defensive team in college basketball in Iowa State. So it's not a matter of that. The question is, can they get any stops, Veno? Can they get enough stops in order to give that offense an opportunity to keep it within this number, or heaven forbid, knock on wood, upend here UConn? I don't think that's going to happen, but they need to get stops. I think that is the bigger question is, do we and they've been pretty good they've actually improved defensively, this team than what we saw them a month ago. I think they've done a pretty good job. They've guarded the three better. The defense has certainly made some strides here over the last couple of weeks in the tournament. But is it enough to be able to stay within 8.5?
Let's put it this way. They might have played three of the worst offensive teams in the tournament so far. Morehead State, they beat. Morehead State, slow, defense, can't shoot. Duquesne, slow, defense, can't shoot. Yep. Iowa State, slow, defense, can't shoot. This is a different animal. It's funny, it's funny how narratives change real quick, right, Joe? Because 2 weeks ago, I think the first thing out of both of our mouths would be, Alabama can't stop anybody. Illinois can't stop anybody, but man, they can score 90-88, write it down. And I think we have to get back to that train of thought here today, now that they're to this point. Alabama still doesn't stop anybody. To your point about that game the other night, North Carolina kind of stopped themselves, missing 13 or 14 shots to start the second half. And Illinois doesn't really stop anybody. They haven't had anybody to stop in this tournament so far. So defensive numbers could improve, but the strength of opposition offensively was horrendous. And like I mentioned earlier, UConn tied now for number one in offensive efficiency across the country. It's a different animal. And having no true point guard, the way these things just keep hitting me hitting my head, Joe. We talked the other day about, I made a comment that I like ball pressure in these tournaments, and UConn applied some ball pressure against San Diego State for about a 4-minute stint in that end of first half when they broke it open a little bit.
Yep.
Without a true point guard, if UConn wants to come after the ball, you could be in trouble. So I do think that could be at times, not for 40 minutes, but at times I do think that could be a problem for Illinois.
Yeah. Also looking, Rob Ray in the chat room wants to know about maybe a first half over 73, thinking both these teams come out with pace. And listen, we've seen Illinois certainly come out and swing first, but that's UConn usually the same way. Not like what Houston usually did, but more or less, I think the in-game adjustments. Who do we trust more here, Hurley? Or, well, you know the answer to that question. But for the chat room, tell them who you trust for in-game adjustments more here, Veno.
I mean, at tournament time, the record is kind of speaking for itself. I don't want to sell Brad Underwood short, but he is the guy who called his own defense soft. And I will agree with you in that you have to believe Illinois is just going to come out there and throw the haymaker. I mean, here we go. Tip off, let's go. Hit the Jets and let's go. And the only game for Ray here, the only game I can use as a reference that looks like this to me is that St. John's game, right? St. John's came out, opening tip, hit the Jets, and UConn just hit the Jets with them. And that game went, I don't know, what did they score? 190 points in that game or something crazy?
Yes.
So I could see that happening. But you know what? Who's going to make a better adjustment? Well, and let's say this: who's got the tools to make the better adjustment? And it's got to be Danny Hurley. He's just got so much at his disposal at this point in time. Seems to push all the right buttons. Kind of reminiscent of when Joe Torre had the Yankees, and no matter, they used to call him Midas, right? Because no matter what he did, it just turned to gold. And it's kind of the shoes that Danny Hurley's in right now.
Absolutely. And Fernando is making a prediction here, Veno. About a 44-33 end of first half UConn lead. So let's see, what would you think you need this score to be? And don't forget, I mean, Illinois struggled in the second half against Iowa State. The defense did start to wear them down here a little bit. They had a much better first half than they did second half here. But what do you think they got to keep this thing within? Under double digits, right? I mean, you've got to keep this thing within double digits as best you can throughout this game, because this isn't Wisconsin, right? Like they're going to, you can't be down double and think you're going to be just able to come back in the second half. You're going to have to keep this thing as close as possible. So anything under 10, I think at the break, and we're still have a fighting chance with Illinois.
Yeah, and real quick for Fernando, let's get Nozmaker to find out what the exact price is on that exact score, 44-33.
Yes.
That could pay off very, very big. Joe, I'll go back to the Northwestern game, right? UConn built that big lead, got complacent. Here comes Northwestern. UConn's laying like 13. All of a sudden, it's down to 15-point lead late, and everybody's sweating. And Hurley was ticked off, to say the least. So again, there's an old adage in these tournaments that stuff like that, you have to have one of those along the way, right, to wake you up. And I don't know if UConn would get caught off guard again. So you're absolutely right. If you're Illinois, I don't think you want to be down by that type of number, 11 at halftime. I mean, it's still reasonable, but it's not where you want to be if you're Illinois.
No, absolutely not. And Rob, Veno here, as it should be an interesting one here. Just a quick look ahead to tomorrow's game here. Some questions coming in here about NC State and Duke. And let me just say this about last night with Houston. I think, Sheed rolling his ankle was brutal. Absolutely brutal. They all knew it. You could just tell body language. He was a leader there. He's been there for 4 years. That was just a loss I don't think they were ever going to be able to overcome. Having said that, is this an NC State team we're getting in front of here, people? 6.5 as the money I expect to come rolling in on Duke. 6.5, 143 is a total in that look ahead there. And we want to know from you guys, by the way, in the chat, or if you're joining us here and you're watching this, we want to know who is the game tomorrow you're most, looking forward to seeing. Is it NC State and Duke? And a lot of Duke fans love that. Or Tennessee and Purdue? What do you think is going to be the better game? Drop that in the comments below. We certainly appreciate you guys, because I can't wait to see. Is it Duke, NC State that everyone's revved up for? Or is it Tennessee or Purdue, Veno? Because for me, believe it or not, I do think it's NC State and Duke. I think that's the game I'm more interested in, because Duke is going to live off of past experiences with them, people with them, right? Just the name Duke. I do think NC State is going to be undervalued once again. I think it's a toss-up between Purdue and Tennessee, depending on which Tennessee shows up. But I think the variables in the NC State-Duke game are tremendous. I can't wait to see that game. What about you, Veno?
Can I step in and just tell you that you're wrong in assessing yourself? Because what you really want, Joe, what we're really interested in is what we've always prayed for. Matt Painter against Rick Barnes. Who doesn't want that?
Yes.
Of course that's what you want, Joe. Of course. You've wanted that for years, and now you're going to get it. An elimination game, to say the least, between Matt Painter and Rick Barnes. The Duke-NC State game becomes interesting because we don't get conference matchups very much, right? These teams have played each other twice. They know every in and out. They know every set they're going to run. Duke won one game. Then the ACC tournament happened, and NC State beat them in that game, so they're certainly confident they'll get up into Duke. I just rattled off 3 bad offenses that Illinois played that might skew their defensive numbers somewhat. Listen, Duke's gotten there by beating Vermont, JMU, and obviously, you described what happened last night to Houston. I mean, you just can't win without Jamal Shed, and Duke barely won. Houston had every opportunity still to win that game. They played with a lot of heart. NC State, unafraid. It's an interesting game, as you mentioned, Joe, and I would not be adverse to taking the underdog there. I just don't know that Duke has showed us anything throughout, as opposed to what NC State's shown us. Beat Texas Tech. Oakland, I've heard a lot of kind of jabs that that's not a good win, but Oakland plays a zone defense that is just different from what anybody else plays. And when you have that quick of a turnaround, we talk about it all the time, only one day to prepare, and all of a sudden you have one day to prepare and you walk out on the floor and you see something like, Coach, what the heck is this thing that we're staring at here? And it took them a while. Give them credit for winning that game. And, of course, last night, Shaka Smart by the wayside. They can't shoot threes, and NC State rolls, but NC State was wire to wire in that game. So very interesting game. I agree with you. And when you have a conference matchup like this, I would tend to look at the dog. I think NC State, once again, unafraid, and these pieces are starting to match up. I mean, is Filipowski going to have his way against those guys down low? Mo Diarra, Burns and company, the Middlebrooks, they've been very, very good down low, and they're very, very good on the perimeter.
We got some interesting comments coming in here on, and Rob's also got a free play in the NBA. He's going to give you guys here in just a minute. Believe it or not, the NBA is still in effect here. Only 3 games here today, but Veno's got a free play coming up. You can also get it over on his page at wt.buzz/RV. And make sure you guys hit that like button if you could for us. Also, hit the subscribe button if you're new to us here at WagerTalk.com. NC State. All right, we got fresh knowledge in the Instagram chat room is all over NC State points here. And I'm kind of with you there. I do think they're going to have some success tomorrow in that game. Ghosted writes, there's a nice bet, first half, highest scoring half with UConn and Illinois, plus 210. Good to see you here, Ghosted. I don't mind that either, Veno. First half being the higher scoring half.
Yeah. Okay, so within that game, they're saying the highest scoring half of UConn, Illinois, or the highest scoring half of all the games this weekend?
No, just that game. UConn, Illinois, plus 210, the higher scoring half. So there could very well be a situation where that's the case.
No, there very well could be, because we laid it out pretty well that we feel like Illinois will come out and throw the first punch, and UConn might go with them. The one thing that scares you, obviously, is if it is a close game at the end and you get to the free throw line a whole bunch and you have those, score, free throws. Second half can be a little bit higher scoring. But yeah, I mean, plus 210 is a nice price for that. I don't know if I'd make that particular bet just for fear of the second half, but still, plus 210 is actually a pretty nice bet. What's the first half? Well, it doesn't even matter what the total is. I think it's 73. But yeah, I wouldn't be mad at anybody making that play. I couldn't talk you off, that's for sure.
No, it's not a bad look at all in there. A lot of folks looking forward to Tennessee and Purdue tomorrow. Yeah, also want to mention as we're getting ready to close out the poll question here today about which underdog in the Elite Eight will win outright today. Clemson had been leading here, but we're starting to get a lot of votes here for the favorites. Both favorites beginning to get there at right now. Thinking both that UConn and Alabama will handle their business here. All right, we got an NBA game. 1, 2, 3 NBA games here. Not the biggest of cards here, Veno. We've only got about 9 games left for the most part across the board in the regular season. Still trying to figure out who's getting the 1 or 2 seed in the West. What's going to happen with teams like Philadelphia and Miami as they're all trying to avoid the play-in games. But you have an interesting one here today involving, I believe you said it was the Memphis Grizzlies taking on the Orlando Magic, who, what happened to this great home court advantage, Orlando? You suck. To take a page out of Tokyo Brandon, what ass have they been here the last couple of games? What in the world? They should be able to beat Memphis by 1 million, right? Or maybe not.
Yeah, let me just say real quick here, Joe, that when you asked Brandon at the end of your conversation, my mic was muted, but I knew where you were leading him to. I'm screaming ass, and he says mediocre. Brandon, come on, man. He did everything but tell you the answer, Brandon. The answer is ass. That was funny. The Memphis Orlando, it probably is the least attractive on the card because the 13-point number, and Memphis obviously has had a season gone awry. But I came across a couple of things here, Joe, and you touched on the home court, right? A couple of nights ago, before they lost to Golden State at home, where they were like a 5-point favorite, Orlando was, there was a quote from Wendell Carter Jr. talking about how important it was for Orlando to secure that 4 spot and get a home series in the first round because of the fans, and they enjoy playing there and they're motivated by their fan base. What do? Draymond gets chucked in that game, and Orlando still can't win. Then they come back against the Clippers, who haven't shown an interest in playing real hard for 2.5 weeks. Get a gift at Madison Square Garden, in Philadelphia for a win, and here last night to Orlando and win again. There were some quotes that I found a little bit concerning where the Orlando Magic are concerned. It started with Paolo Banchero, who basically, and I'm just going to paraphrase here rather than reading the whole quote, basically he's unhappy with the way he's playing. He's like, I'm not rebounding hard enough. I'm not defending hard enough. I'm not shooting. I'm not happy with the way I'm playing. It's not a good sign. And then you get Mo Wagner coming in and saying that this is the key to me. Orlando is sitting there bidding for the number 4 seed in the Eastern Conference playoffs, yet in his words, they're playing like they don't even belong in the playoffs. The confidence level of this team to try and convince themselves that they even should be a playoff team isn't there right now. And if it's not there, you don't want to be laying 13 with a team that's trying to figure it out. Now, he said, of course, all of these guys and coaches, when they finish these quotes, they say, we'll figure it out and we'll be okay, right? Well, I don't know if you'll be okay in a back-to-back situation against a team that's got nothing to lose, catching 13 points, a team that since Desmond Bane has come back, I think he's played 6 of the last 7, has scored pretty well. I even looked at that team total, Joe. Memphis's team total here was 95.5. It's so low and so tempting. But They get Luke Kennard back tonight after a 5-game absence. Luke Kennard had been away for 5 games. He's back tonight. That's an additional 3-point shooter. Jaren Jackson, Desmond Bain, Luke Kennard, Gigi Jackson, who's drawn praise from even LeBron James after last game, talking about how good this kid is playing and how much better he's gotten. I just, when you have a free and easy team against a team that's a little uptight, their shirts buttoned a little too tight, and they're starting to wonder a little bit about themselves. I don't want to be laying 13 with that. I'd much prefer taking 13 with a team that, not the greatest in the world, but they're 3-3 against the spread last 6. And as I mentioned, they're scoring more points now that Bain's back, and with Kennard coming back tonight, I would think they'll get a few more. So I'll take my shot with plus 13. I mean, Orlando needs the win. They probably get the win, but that's not to say that they have to win by 14. So I'm going to take Memphis here plus 13 points as the free play for it. So you guys, if you want to see it, the full write-up, it's on my homepage at WagerTalk.com.
Yeah, so interesting stuff there, guys. Go see that. Veno, we got fresh knowledge in Instagram here joining us today. Also, he's calling it the Memphis Hustle, man. They are getting it done today against the Orlando Magic, and I love what Leg Show Magazine said, that, listen, the Magic are going through a bump in the road. It happens to all teams. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does. But I'm also, shout out to S. Warrior, once again, managed to get that ankle bracelet off again. Also wants to know somehow or another, is there any way that the Orlando Magic could borrow a few points from the Miami Heat after last night? Did you see that final of the score? Was that nearly a 70-point beatdown against Portland?
142 to 82. Maybe S. Warrior was front row cheering them on last night because they played. They really, I think I saw Adebayo had 21, so it wasn't like somebody went totally off last night, but they crushed that team. And it's the second time this year Portland's lost by 60. That's crazy.
Yeah, no, that is actually good. I believe it was so out of control. S. Warrior played 8 minutes and dropped 12 points. Ankle bracelet and all. Shout out to him. We love him hanging out in our YouTube Shorts feed here today. And again, if you're on a mobile, guys, we certainly welcome you to check out our new live YouTube Shorts stream each and every day here. We appreciate you guys hanging out with us. Big shout out, by the way, to Fresh Knowledge, Jeff Zook and company, those that dropped in on Instagram. You guys are the best. We certainly do appreciate it. Team Cat Whisper in the house, a Clemson fan. Biggest game in our basketball history. Hope we can keep playing loose. I think you're in good shot here today. And that reminds me, our final poll here today. Question regarding which underdog today in the Elite Eight is going to win outright. We got a 50% mark here on Clemson to get it done against Alabama, and I cannot argue with that at all here. Clemson, love it. It's my favorite play of the day, especially now that the hook is available. I think they keep rolling on into the Final Four. I don't know how much we can help you after that, Team Cat Whisperer, but hey, Final Four is an absolute possibility here. And Veno, I know there were a couple of comments here before we get out. There is a new football season starting today. Is there not here today, and that we should be looking forward to talking about in the near future?
Yeah, there is. United Football League, which is actually a merger of the USFL and the XFL, two separate spring leagues from last year, have merged the talent together. A lot of guys did not make rosters, but they've upgraded the talent in the league. And it's kind of, Joe, I tell you the truth, it would be like watching NFL preseason backups that actually wanted to win. Coaches not just experimenting. So the competitiveness is there. I'm actually in play here with both of these games. So again, if you go to wagertalk.com and pick up the daily package, you'll get the UFL plays. Play the opener starts at 1:00 with Birmingham and defending XFL champion Arlington. And the second game is the St. Louis Battlehawks led by A.J. McCarron at quarterback, and a receiving crew where you will recognize a bunch of the names. They're involved in that second game. But a couple of things real fast here, and then I'll get out.
Sure.
The USFL, to me, was the more talented league. So you have 4 USFL teams and you have 4 XFL teams that make up this league that comprise the 8 teams. And they had a draft, they redrafted. And like I say, a lot of guys that played last year did not make it. So the talent has gotten better. There's an upgrade there. That first game happens to be a matchup of defending USFL champion and defending XFL champion Birmingham versus Arlington. Skip Holtz, Joe, one of your guys, the head coach at Birmingham, and Bob Stoops, the head coach at Arlington. All of these head coaches are recognizable. Wade Phillips, you'll see on the sidelines. You'll see Sean Payton's ex-defensive coordinator, Greg Williams, that maniac running the defense for the DC Defenders. So a lot to cover there, but I am in action here with a couple of the odds makers. Let's see if they knew what they were doing here to start the season. We'll find out.
Listen, Anthony Marquez, instead of, in the chat room, instead of going with a 10-point teaser on Clemson, UConn, Tennessee, and North Carolina State, I would instead maybe add a couple of USFL/XFL plays here as well, so you can retire after that hits here today. Might as well, if you're going to throw shit against the wall, you might as well go full board here. Shoot, by the way, Nick in New York City, Duke, team total over 70.5 points, coming off a low-scoring, tough game versus Houston. He likes that team total over 74.5 points. I think that game is going to be very interesting tomorrow, one that we may eventually have to play at the total and look towards the over. And by the way, we are seeing some line movement. The total in the Illinois-UConn game is being steamed right now. 156.5 is what we are seeing. It's starting to pop up and light up across the board. So if you're looking for that over, better hurry up here and grab the best number that you can. Veno, best of luck here, my man. And yes, by the way, shout out to Fortnite there. Also, a very happy Easter, happy holiday to you and yours, those that are hanging. Don't forget, guys, each and every Saturday, 11 a.m. Eastern time, we're here for Last Call to help get any of those last-minute plays, questions answered for you. We certainly do appreciate it. Again, wishing all of you a very safe and happy holiday. Enjoy the games, and then come back and join us again on Monday for another week of daily content here on WagerTalk TV. It's all about cashing those tickets. Let's get it done. Until then, hit that subscribe button, become part of the WagerTalk TV family, and best of luck here with today. We'll talk to you again soon. See ya.